And then the committee can vote, provide those online to vote, and we identify them.
Good afternoon, welcome everybody to the August 19th meeting of the Forest Development Council's Marketing Committee. First on the agenda is the roll call. The county's asked us to do official roll calls.
Yeah. Well,
And Chairman Feltner would like a yes, not a yay. It's a yes or no, if you're not in.
Should we all say yes at the same time?
I would have to do roll call, has to be one at a time. It's very efficient.
May Fleming,
Yes.
Lynette John, Amy Matthews,
and let's make sure she can.
Can you hear me? I'm here.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Howard Schwartz,
Yes.
Pam Rothenberg,
I'm here. Could you hear me?
yes, Pam,
Okay,
Vice Chair Lewis,
Yes.
Chair Hermanson.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, check. Per the regulations, we have to ask any committee member to disclose any conflict of interest with anything that's on the agenda today. Anybody has a conflict? Okay, so now, hearing none, we'll move to the approval of the marketing committee.
Actually, if we could approve the two members who are online first, sir, and then we'll go from there, that'd be helpful.
State or county regulations, we need to take a motion and have a vote on approving board members using Zoom.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Heather, a second from Howard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. The next action, I think we could take these two together.
Yeah.
Is approval of the marketing committee meetings, May 25th and May 22nd. Are there any corrections or modifications to any of those minutes from any member? Hearing none, then we can entertain a motion. Nancy ringtone. A motion, we have another motion from Heather and a second from Howard to approve both of those sets of minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. All right. We're into the meat of this.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you, guys. We're gonna do, I'm gonna click on the screen so the people online can see, so you can follow either way. If you want to follow in your book or you can follow online, we will try to go through slowly so people can follow along. The first thing I want to say about the plan this year is, and for those of you that were at the last couple of meetings, you know, I always appreciate feedback and input, and we tried to incorporate some of those things that we had in the discussion. But the format is going to be pretty similar. So those of you that have been on the committee for a while really will recognize this format. And but there are a couple of interesting things that we learned both in the research section, as well as some things that we added in the implementation section. So we'll kind of spend a little more time on maybe those things and not as much on things that have been perhaps seen before. But stop us at any point if you have questions. We're happy to make this a working session and go through. And just so you know, the process also next week is the TDC meeting. So once the committee, sees, provides any feedback and votes on the plan, we'll take it to the TDC next week. And then the meeting that will take it to the board will be September 16th. It's actually the only regular board meeting of September. So that's the one we're targeting for that. So just talking a little bit about budget. This is always an interesting slide, and this kind of has, evolved and changed over the years. And you can see, we for a while, we were going back to 16, 17, 18, we were kind of at that 13.5 million level. And then we popped up to 15.5 in, 19, and then we broke 16 the next year. And we've been pretty much jumping, other than the COVID year, which you see we dropped to 13 again, but after that, we just kept, kind of jumping up right up until the last couple of years where, we had 25.5 million, and last year we had 25.25 million. So what I would say is 2 good years in a row. This year, it is looking like we're gonna hit 26 million. We've done a number of different analyses. We have, June just came in, and June was a good, strong June. It wasn't a record June, but it was one of the best Junes. And then July is right now looking very, very strong. With only July, August, and September left in the fiscal year, we're kind of predicting that we are going to hit 26. Whether we break 26, that's kind of, I would love to see that. Obviously, it's always nice to kind of break through a new plateau. But we'll see how it goes the next few months. But I think we've got a good shot at it because July looks good, and very early August looks okay. Looks like we can do well. The budget for next fiscal year is 27. So we're always asked to provide a target budget. People always ask, well, are you held to that budget? Well, honestly, it's been 27 million the last 2 years, and we have not made it. I'm still here, so I guess it's okay. I think the worst thing is to set the target and then spend to the target and not manage your budget to the appropriate level. So that's what we always try to do. Is if we're not going to hit, for instance, this year, if we hit 26, we're holding back in the marketing budget $500,000 because you're $1 million short of your budget, and their marketing budget is about 50% of the total. So we're holding back the $500,000, and so we're good where we don't spend to the budget, we spend for the actual. So that's kind of been my learning in this role. So anyway, that's sort of where we are. The next page is net. So what happens is after you take out the tax collector's collection amount, you take out the state mandated 5% holdback, which state requires all counties and municipalities to hold back 5% of their budget for emergency purposes. So we do that, and then we take out the administrative amount, which is each year it kind of differs, somewhere in that 7 to 8% range is where that is. So by the time you take all of that out, what you're left with is about 23. I'm sorry, yeah, that might be easier. Comes out to about 23 million. And you can see here, as I mentioned, promotions, advertising about half, beach improvements about 25%, and then from there on down. As far as revenue for next year, this is the revenue budget. By the way, this budget has only been presented to the county manager's office, and it was submitted as part of the county manager's submission to the board, but it has not been voted on yet. So it'll get voted on by the TDC next week, and then it'll also get voted on in September by the board. But you can see, the TDT comes from a couple of different areas of the TDT collection: 25% of the first 2 cents, 100% of the 5th cent, and then it's also the remainder of the 4th cent. The 4th cent is for the stadium operational expenses that are capital related. So there are some things that they have to do each year to cover, like the cost of field maintenance and things like that, that help with the capital expenditures at the stadium. That comes out of the budget first, and then what's remaining can go into marketing. So those are sort of the big areas, and then of course carry forward.
I just line back to the one before. 13, 3, and 5 is not.
It's not because the does not include carry forward. So this this is just literally showing the net down of the gross revenue. But in the budget, we account for things like carry forward in addition to
Put the
that.
net down on this slide here with the pie chart. If you're budgeting 27, it doesn't, it only adds to 23. You're budgeting 27 to 25, 26, right?
Right.
This adds up to 23.
Right, so that basically shows the net of what happens when you take out, admin fees, tax collection for the tax collector and the 5% for the state. That's why it's 23, so like literally, I always like to show that because it shows $4 million. It's like literally comes out off the top before you even start allocating it. And then we take that 23, which is in here, it's baked into this. And then, of course, it's 48% of that. And then we add things like earned interest, carry forward, things like that. So there's adjustments that are made to that. So that pie chart's more of a kind of theoretical, and this is the actual budget.
You might want to, for those looking at this, clarify that that's not a fee, you can't tie this.
Yeah,
It's this second
that will not
slide.
tie together. Yeah, it won't. That's total TDT collections. And this is really just looking at the 1441, which is the advertising marketing component of that. So, yeah, they won't ever tie together exactly, so. But it's just a slide I use to kind of show what happens to 27 million after you net it down
Okay,
and begin allocating. So anyway, 13 million is the revenue, and then on the next slide, obviously, we'll get into the details of how this is allocated, but this is the how 13 million is being spent. Most of that is spent in the promotional activity section, which is what we're going to cover as we get into the meat of this.
here on this slide, you have. We're on page numbers. Here on the
Zero at the bottom right.
You got
If you look by the little
interest
rocket,
transfer.
there's a number.
Oh, fine.
Yeah.
Here we have interest transfer from 143 to 146 of 100,000, 150,000. And then the star below it, you have a transfer of 1.12 million.
Yeah, well, so the first, sorry, you're talking about page 6, right? Under
Page
expenses.
5.
It's fine.
Page 5, you've got a line item at the bottom, interest
Right.
transfer from 143 to 46 of 150.
Right,
That was last year, and then you got 500 in the coming year.
that's right.
And then you've got the star additional 1.125.
For lifeguard.
From,
Right. So the 13 million is net of the lifeguard funds that are coming in from 2 different other sources. So the board last year kind of dictated that 1.56 million be spent for lifeguards. And it came from 3 different places. It came from the marketing budget, the capital budget, and the cultural budget. So that's just kind of it'll tie together. And when you see that at the very end, you'll see the total amount. Well, when we add all the different line items of all the different marketing campaigns, and then we add that in, it'll come up to 14.1.
This 1.125 has not been deducted out of the 13.385 yet, or 13.
The 13 million does not include the 1.1. That's being.
So it was deducted.
It is deducted, that's right. Yep. And you see it on the next page as well on the revenue side.
I'm a
Again,
numbers guy, it's confusing here.
Well, it's showing here the 14,126, and I'm assuming that 13,385 is after that 1.12 is
Sorry.
deducted from that total.
13,385 is last year. You gotta look to the right.
Okay, for 13.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so, and then just also, in the sports marketing category, so you see an asterisk on page 6, next to the 60,000. 60,000 is what we're spending on the sports marketing line, but there's another 240,000 that is part of our new marketing support program. So the board literally, I think about a week ago, just awarded think it was about 250,000 for sports grants, basically. That'll go to help incentivize, for lack of a better term, sports, events to happen here. So that's where it used to be 300, it used to be 340. We cut a little bit out of it, but there's still 240 that's being spent on helping events, come here. So we haven't abandoned that.
240 has already been moved. What you're saying, already been moved?
It was moved, right, it was moved into a category called the Marketing Support Program, and the board has actually already awarded those funds. So they just awarded them, about a week ago. So, along with cultural funds, which were sort of lumped together with that. So that new program is a combination of two old grant programs. That we used to have sports grants, we used to have cultural grants, now we just have one marketing support program for all events. And that's,
Is that a new fund?
it's actually sits in the marketing budget. But, it comes from two different sources, the cultural fund supplies, part of it, and then the, sports fund supplies part of it. So the sports fund's always been part of marketing, but, the cultural fund has always been kind of separate. And we've, over the last couple of years, we've been asked to kind of combine that into one program.
No, I'm gonna ask this again. If you deducted this 240 already for the coming year, and the total amount to spend is 13.000500, shouldn't that 240 be a line item in here? In order to make that math work, here's your budget to spend. This ties to the budget to spend, yet you've taken 240 out. So where's the 240, which line is the 240 coming from? Following? If you find, if this $13,500,000 ties, and this is how you split it. Totals tied, but you're saying 240 has been taken out.
Right.
So where,
So I guess, yes, that 240, is that not housed under marketing, like you were saying?
It is housed under marketing, it's just not part of our, traditional promotional spending. So it's sort of, we just kind of categorize it separately, yeah. And it's actually 240 plus another 3 something, I must be like,
So I guess the question is, should
350.
it still be listed under here
It
as part of the
should
total,
be.
knowing it's
Your
allocated for that?
yeah, your sports marketing line was 340 last year and 60 this year with a star, but
yeah, I could make, I could add it to that and just make it 300. If that's,
if you
if you think
added-
that'll make more sense to the TDC, we can do that. And then just note that it's part of it.
It's 240 is earmarked for it.
Right.
If you add that 240 in, you're gonna be out of balance, so that comes out of promotional activities. So the promotional activities is actually 240 less.
No, it comes out of the sports line item, so last year, 340 was the total we had, so it would be 300 this year.
Right.
This coming year.
What I'm saying is the sum total of 13,500,000, when you add 240 back into the table, is gonna be 240 higher. So since your total isn't moving, something else has gotta move.
Although it might have been taken out of page 5 too. That's the question.
Yeah, it was.
Your
was
240,
taken out.
yeah, if it was taken out of page 5 also, i.e., I don't know which line item it came from, but
Right,
if it was from the funds of 1441 balance forward, and
right,
it was taken out of that,
yeah,
then it was taken out of both pages.
right,
And I don't know exactly which line item, but it,
yeah.
Okay, you're right.
Okay. So that being said, this will really confuse you on page 7, if that threw you. So a couple of years ago, those of you who've been around know this, District 2 came to the board members and made an argument that they felt, due to the amount of money that's collected in District 2, which is Cocoa Beach, Cape Canaveral, Cocoa and Merritt Island, and Rockledge, they felt that they should get half of the marketing And the board agreed, and so the last couple of years, we basically split the real net, what I call the net funds for promotional. We've split them into 50% for District 2, and then each of the other districts gets 12.5%. So, and the reason it's a little bit lower than on the previous page is because there are funds that I had to pull out for pullback. So we had lower carry forward than we anticipated, so I'm holding 700,000 back for that. And obviously those can get added back in if we see collections keeping pace or exceeding pace. We can add these back in at a later time. And then 500,000, that was from 1446, which was basically market again from the marketing support program from the cultural. So that can't really get spent by the districts per se. So that's how we get to that. So the District 2 has 5.9, and then the other 4 districts have 5.9 split 4 ways. So, and people who ask, how do we track all of this? You know, we work very closely with the agency on everything, and we have to bucket our campaigns in different ways so we can keep track of how much we're spending for each district. So it's fun.
So basically, you're adding that 11.8 plus your 7 plus your 5, you get back to your 13
That's right.
million 5.
That's right. Good. Thank you, Robert. And then we also have a disaster fund that's, you know, just, we have not added really anything to that other than the natural growth from earned interest. So that fund has grown a little bit over the last couple of years, but it's basically 1.4 million. So if we were to have, you know, a storm or something where we would need some extra marketing in the marketplace, we can tap that. So. All right, enough numbers. Enough budget numbers. Now we're going to get into other numbers. There were 2 studies that are in this plan that weren't in last year. Last year, we did a visitor study that was sort of an overarching study looking at the visitor and what they spent, where they stayed, what they did, all of those things. And that helped. It actually helped inform us quite a bit about, you know, the elements of the marketing plan in terms of content, some of the things that we did in different ads that kind of address some of those things. This was just a little bit deeper dive on a few things that I think really help us understand about these different segments and what the potential is for them, and the importance that they have. Because I always questioned whenever we would do visitor studies, they would always be based on overnight visitors. I was always like, well, I know we get a lot of day trippers, you know, some for rocket launches, some they just come for the day for the beach or what have you. What do they do and what impact do they have and what potential do they have for generating not only, you know, economic impact, but coming back later and maybe spending more on an overnight stay. So this was just, you know, our approach to understanding that segment. So this day tripper study was actually a complete separate study. I'm not going to go through every slide, but there's a few things I do want to point out in it because I think it was very interesting. As you can see, purpose, a lot of them are coming for leisure vacation or visiting friends and family, which honestly, they kind of go together. And then, you know, we just wanted to understand, like, what are they doing when they come here? No surprise, you know, beach, local attractions, going to parks, cultural events or things that they're coming here for. What were they looking for? You know, what were the things that they were looking for when they came here? Things like, you know, easy to park, quality of the beach, the cost of visiting. Other activities, you know, no surprise, a lot of them are coming over to see a rocket launch and go to the beach. I mean, that is a pervasive theme through pretty much all of our visitors, but certainly the day visitor, that's a major motivator. Interestingly, a pretty high percentage had seen advertising from us. 5 out of 6 had noticed some kind of advertising about the Space Coast before they came over. And then this just breaks down some of the, where did they see that, social media, searches online, et cetera, billboards that popped up. I think, all of you probably seen, there's a pretty big billboard campaign supporting Cocoa Beach. That was something that the Cocoa Beach Hotel Association really wanted and has added, so that's risen a little bit on our recall since that's been up. Then just looking at their profile, median age 57, median income 83,000. They're heavy from Florida, but interestingly, they're not, not all necessarily from Florida. They're coming from all over. So what that means to me is they're coming probably to Orlando, they're staying in Orlando, and then they're diverting for a day over here. So that kind of gets us to a little bit of understanding about the nature of what they're doing. And then of course, we look at international, so that's a much smaller piece of that pie. But even the international visitors who are probably coming to Orlando are also coming here for a day. And then we have it broken down by market, so you can see, of course, a lot of different markets that they're coming from. So interestingly, most of those markets are on our marketing list. Travel party size 3.2, the trip experience, some of them are coming multiple times. So even though they're coming for a day, they're coming multiple times to do that. Heavy, Cocoa Beach, Cape Canaveral, no surprise, but they're also going to other areas. And then we also want to know, well, where else are they visiting around the state? And interestingly, they're kind of traveling around a little bit. So, half of them are going to Tampa, Daytona, Jacksonville. Some of them are going to the Keys or Miami. What they're doing, they're going to the beach, they're looking at watching rockets, going to attractions, they're eating at local restaurants. They're spending, so our overnight visitor spending, which was last year's study, our regular visitor spending is about $200 a day. So I think it's like $197 a day, so it's just under 200. So they're actually spending a touch more on a per day basis. Obviously, they're only here for the day, so that's all we're getting. Where as a somebody staying overnight, staying an average of 4.5 nights, but gives you a feel for they are spending when they come here. So it's not just we're going to the beach and going home. And then you see the breakdown of what they're spending on. And then some of them are, they are cruising. So 1 in 7 of them went on a cruise. To me, I think what happens is a lot of them come in the night before, they stay in Orlando, and then they come here the day of the cruise. And so they're staying, they have to stay, half a day or more. Their average time is about 5.5 hours. So, they're getting on their ship at some point, but they're spending some time in the destination before that. And you can see which ships they're cruising out of. And then, this was really important, was understanding, what's their evaluation of the experience, and, very high ratings. So, they like us when they come here. And then even more importantly, on the next slide, slide 16, 3 out of 4 day visitors said that they would likely or very likely have an overnight stay on their next visit. So that's where ultimately we were trying to get to was, okay, are these people worth marketing to? Are they worth, investing something in? Potentially the answer is yes, because they're going to come back at some point and stay overnight. And then again, interesting to look at, what are some of the motivations, seeing a rocket launch, hotel deals, maybe local attractions. So gives us a little bit of a feel about how would we market to them, how would we message to them?
How was the participants gathered?
Deborah, do you want to answer that one? So Deborah, by the way, Deborah Webster is our research and analytics manager, so.
So this was, we partner with our research firm at the Tallahassee. I create the survey, they repackage it slightly for us, and then we, worked with our digital team on this for paid social. So, you know, there's a beautiful image, then something like, have you been to the Space Coast as a day trip visitor recently? Take our survey.
And there's an incentive, right, for this? Was there an incentive for this?
Yeah,
So is that organic social or paid social that you use?
Page.
Because the only reason I ask that is because when you look at the demographics of the source of residency, where they're coming from, you know, most of the survey is very keen to similar things that we see, right, at Space Center. The only difference really was, the big difference was that international.
Right,
And I wonder if that's more, is that truly who's coming here, or is that more of how you selected the participants of the survey?
yeah, I mean, my belief
know?
about international is it's a little harder to get them to fill that survey
Absolutely.
because they're leaving and they're going back to their country. They're probably not even seeing the Facebook ads per se.
That's what I'm thinking.
So when it said like 2%, I'd say it's probably more between 5 and 10% is international, but we don't know for that for 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so then just from there, we said, you know, we wanna look a little bit more at space. Our friends at Ambar actually did on page 18, if we go to 18, did a little bit of a survey about space in general. Kind of this was more of a, and I don't know, Rebecca, you know, I'll turn to you if they ask about methodology, but this was more of a, we just want to understand where space fits in with the marketing mix. And just across, not necessarily across those people that come here, but just across everybody. And I found it really interesting that, you know, as you go through these bullet points, every one of them shows that there's a really high interest in space. But the ultimate bullet point was the last one for us, which is 65% would be more likely to visit a destination that features space in their advertising. I was like, wow, that's a really crazy number. You know, 2/3 of the people are that interested that they would, you know, potentially make a decision about their vacation. So this was just an online survey that they did with 1,000 people, and I found it just super interesting to see that there's that big an interest in space just across the board. You know, 61% are saying feel space marketing is somewhat or extremely effective at capturing consumer interest. And 62% would be more likely to buy brands that support space. So they, you know, it's become, I think, more and more relevant for us. And we always are sort of question, you know, why do we feature rockets so much in our advertising? Well, this certainly shows this, it's a good reason to do that. The next piece is basically, this was an extract out of the visitor study that we did last year. So we said, you know, we did, you have to remind me of the numbers. It was about,
15.
no, the total visitor study was about 2,500. Yeah. I'm on the page.
So that was the overnight study 2 years ago.
Right. So we kind of said, well, in that study, it asked what was the primary reason for your visit. So we started digging in and saying, oh, well, what if we just carved out the people that said, my primary reason for coming was to see a rocket launch or come here for some space related activity, right? So we said, okay, let's extract those people and see what that looks like. So that's what this is. So not surprising. It was a little, I'm just looking at page 21, a little higher household income at 103,000 than the average. I think the average was in the 90s. And, you know, a good percent fly. Obviously, a percentage are from Florida, but they're from all over. They're coming from the south, from the northeast, from the Midwest. So there's a good mix. This one, Howard, did have a lot of international in it. So we saw that, and we saw the states they were coming from. Their average party size was a touch smaller, it was 2.8. I think our full party size is like 3.2. Little more without children, so that was kind of interesting, a little higher without children. And then what else did they do? Of course, going to the beach always pops up there. And then nature, outdoor activities, things like that. On page 22, length of stay, 4.8. Visitor spending. So this is the visitor spending for just those people that primarily were here for rocket launches. They spent more money on a per day basis and more on a per party basis. So that was kind of ultimately, that was what we wanted to get to say, okay, are these people, are they more affluent? What are they doing when they're here? Are they just watching a rocket and they're taking off and they're leaving? No, they're staying here almost 5 nights. They're spending money, so this is a segment obviously that we want to keep going after. And then among those, about 10% were international, and they were also, had a good household income. And then, of course, they were very much interested in coming to visit again and had scored us pretty high. So just a little learning about that segment, because that is an important segment for us, and we don't want to ever forget about them. Okay. So now we get into, on page 25, a little bit about just what's happening in the hotel, the vacation rental world. We had a number of new properties open up. We are now at 11,269 rooms. First time we're over 11,000. That's obviously fueling some of the growth in the TDT as well. We anticipate about 12 more hotels are slated to open in the next couple of years. Obviously a big one right down here, 500 rooms, the Westin. Room night demand was, and this is just, I believe this was calendar year, was 2.5, a little over 2.5 million in 23, which was down from 2.7 million in 22. But in 24, it went up a little bit to 2.66, so we were up 4.4% from the 2.55. So that was nice to see a little bit of growth in room night demand. That's number of rooms rented. And then the next slide is fiscal year, and you could see we pretty much were flat. For all intents and purposes, we're up 0.4%. Compared to the calendar year prior. But interestingly, if you look at our peer set, Sarasota dropped, Lauderdale was up a couple percent, Jacksonville and Palm Beach were up about the same as us. St. Pete was down a couple of percent. Daytona is an anomaly because if you remember the year before 22-23 is when they had the storms and a lot of rooms got taken out of inventory. So that 12% is really just their rooms opening up again after a couple of storms that shut them down. So that's not a real good comparison on that one. On the vacation rental side, we've seen growth, over the years. I mean, back in 21, we were under 4,000. Then that number grew to just under 7. The last time we did an inventory check, it was 9,000. So seeing a lot of growth. Now, of course, the way that splits out, about 6,000 of those were Airbnb and 3,000 were VRBO. We know that there's a ton of overlap. Probably 90% of those 3,000 rooms are already counted in Airbnb. So 6,000 is probably closer to the real number. But what we're seeing is ADR and
Times 2 rooms,
times, right,
12,000.
right. Yeah, average.
more than the hotel rooms, you know.
That's right, yep. Yep, absolutely. And then one of the things we've seen is, yeah, because that's units, so, yeah. So one of the things we've seen is ADR in that space going up. But occupancy has kind of been dropping. So, you know, RevPAR has been sort of slightly, you know, slightly up, very slightly up. But we're seeing, when we get the TDT each month, we're seeing at least the last 6 months, a slight decline in revenue from that. And that's probably driven by occupancy, not ADR. So whatever that means, you know, we'll keep an eye on it. We always watch it. It's still about a third of the TDT delivered. So that's why I always look at vacation rentals. It's an important component. All right. Strategic consideration, you know, not a ton changed in here. There's a couple of nuances, and I'll just point them out. And then when we get into the meat of the campaigns, we'll talk a little bit more about it. But you know, our obviously increasing destination demand from key source markets is still a major strategy for us, and we're going to keep going after those core markets. And we'll talk about what those are and how deep our financial you know, spend can go, because we do have a little bit less money this year than 2 years ago when we had 15 million. So, you know, we're not maybe able to go quite as deep in terms of markets, but more importantly, on the international front, you'll see, and we'll talk a little bit more about international. Canada is a big question for us. We really need to keep an eye on that market. It's we got into our campaign this year, saw a lot of negative comments coming through social, and we sort of pulled back a little bit because we were just like, feel like we're poking the bear a little bit too hard. Let's kind of pull back and just see what happens. So, you know, there's some of the international, you know, we play heavily in Europe as well, and we're seeing, you know, Germany feeling the same kind of effects. UK and Ireland are hanging in there, and they're sort of kind of holding their own. And maybe they're not quite as sensitive to political as some of the other markets. So probably UK and Ireland are where we're going to continue to play, while the others will probably kind of hold off a little bit, certainly with consumer advertising. As far as the others, I mean, there's not a lot of other things that we've changed. I will say under on the right side, there, optimize efforts with data first decisions. We've really streamlined our media. We use a lot of calculators related to visitor spending. So we're either able to directly look at bookings or estimate bookings based on like room nights booked or something like that. So there's a lot of metrics that we use, and over the last 2 or 3 years, we've kind of started with a pretty broad base of digital advertisers that we work with. And we've kind of pared that down to a sort of a more, I won't say more manageable, but a smaller data set of media based on that. So that's something I think we've tried to keep focusing on. Other than that, not much else on that page. On the next section, you know, one thing that we did see, and we're talking about building our brand ambassadors, working with event organizers, travel advisors, tour operators. You know, that's still an important segment of the market, and we've seen a real increase in desire to have familiarization tours here on the part of the industry, travel industry. And a big part of that is more ships. The changes at the port, they really want to see that. But what we try to do is we get them in the night before and try to, you know, educate them while they're here. The other thing that we've seen more interest in from the hotel side is more interest in meetings and conventions. So we've begun to step that up, and you'll see later on in the implementation side, there's this whole slide about meetings and conventions and how we're trying to support that market. So those are some of the, you know, more strategic things that we've seen coming through. The other thing is, you know, we still very much partner with the airport on trying to generate new service. The air service has been really tough the last couple of years, especially domestically because there's been shortages of equipment, shortages of pilots. There's been, all kinds of other issues going on. And so there's a lot of movement around, sort of consolidation and trying to tighten down the revenue metrics on the part of the airlines. Hopefully, things will begin to open up over the next couple of years. We have an opportunity next year to actually bring about 20 airlines into the market for a conference. And during that conference, we're going to do a big familiarization tour with them, including having them out at Kennedy Space Center. Thank you, Howard, for hosting.
You said 20 airlines.
Mhm. Yep, it's 20 to 25 airlines are coming in they have a quarterly conference that they do all over, different places all over the world. And they've selected our destination as one of those. So it's a chance for them to meet and talk, but then we get them at night and get to do some different things with them. So we're gonna try to wow them and show them that the greatness that Space Coast is. And I always say, when you can bring people into your marketplace and sort of demonstrate, all the fun things that you have going on, I'm really hoping for a rocket launch, but we don't have any influence on that, but that would be a cherry on the top, yeah. You put that into NASA for us.
What airline, we have Delta and Allegiant.
We have Delta, Allegiant, American, and Sun Country as domestic, and then TUI is our international. So TUI's on a multi-year contract. They seem to be very happy. They say they're gonna most likely renew. I think they're in the 4th year of a 7-year contract. So they're right in the middle of it, but we try to work with them a lot on the marketing side. So that's a piece of our international budget that we work with them on. So, yeah. So, but if we can land, one of them is Breeze. Breeze has been, continually looking for different opportunities. So that might be one. The other is just to grow the routes that, Delta and American, Delta's Atlanta, Americans, DC. Americans, Charlotte. We're trying to add DC. I think they did for a little while, and then they pulled back on it. So we're trying to keep DC into the mix. And then Allegiant has been, they've had a few different, they were doing Nashville for a while. Now they're doing Cincinnati. They seem to be happy with Cincinnati. And then they're also doing Allentown. They were doing Pittsburgh and now Allentown. Allentown seems to be doing well for them. So if we can get them to add a couple, that's always helpful. That's always the goal, get them to grow. Okay, I am now gonna turn it over to Lori. While you talk.
Sure.
That way.
All right, so we're gonna go through this pretty quickly because you've seen most of the creative and the current plan, and I'll point out whatever's new and what's changing. 2 big things that are happening right now are a new TV spot has just been completed by our friends at for Cocoa Beach. So that is already in rotation. That started last month. Okay, yeah, beginning of it. And then we're working on a new spot for Cape Canaveral, so Port Canaveral, sorry. And they'll be filming on that one for September 1st. 2 new things in the mix.
For the Star of the Seas, get a lot of, did you promote that for your channels? Star of the Seas arrival?
We did not, but it got a lot of coverage. We're seeing the clip reports. There's been a lot of coverage.
That's a big ship.
And there was a
I
lot.
was out there the other day. That thing's massive.
There was
Like,
quite a bit of coverage
pretty-
from the ship that got diverted here the other day as well. So,
What do you mean?
they were going to Bahamas from New York, I think,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
and they, so yeah,
So more-
several of the stations. All right, we're gonna go to billboards.
Oh, sorry, I want to, one other thing we're mentioning is, we've been speaking with some of the tourism folks from the Melbourne, Pompeii area, and they expressed an interest in kind of working with us on some different programming. And so, I think 2 things that we're going to be doing. One is Laura's going to be working with them to kind of help their what we call them members. They're working through the Melbourne Chamber to how they interact with us, because there's a lot of social media and website connectivity that we can give them that help uplift what they're doing. And then secondarily, we're working on some research to understand a little bit more about why Melbourne and Palm Bay versus staying somewhere else in the county. And the goal ultimately would be to do a bit of a branding campaign for them once we have some learnings from that. So probably as we go into the fall and then into next fiscal year, or sorry, into the next calendar year, we'll have some new creative for Melbourne, Palm Bay area.
Where do we mainly, from a media buy, what's the large media buy for these commercials? Is it just the Space Coast area? Is it Orlando? Is it, where do we mainly purchase the media?
Oh, as far as the source market that we place media in?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and there's a slide in here that will show that, but, state of Florida, Orlando, Tampa, West Palm, Miami, Jacksonville. And then outside the state of Florida, that's mostly cable and streaming, kind of a mix. And then outside, that's for TV. Digital is similar markets. Then for outside of Florida, Atlanta, Charlotte, then going off the coast, Philly, DC, New York, and Chicago. So those are our, yeah. Yeah, and those are more streaming, because obviously we can't afford cable in New York, so we do more streaming and more digital up there.
All right. So a few of these have been updated, and we do have plans to update some more for Cocoa Beach, just to make them more vibrant, a little more attention given.
Yeah, on the billboards, we're working with the Hotel Association on new creative for them and new board placement. Trying to put a few more boards down in South Florida coming up north. And then a few more boards on the turnpike coming south from I-75. I-95 is pretty well covered, but that's kind of where the gaps are, so we're gonna try to fill those in. And then new creative, as far as some new photography and some new things that we shot recently. So we'll get through all of that, because there's a lot of boards. And then so we do have a couple of boards that are like Melbourne, Titusville, Palm Bay. Welcome to the Space Coast, generic welcome to the Space Coast.
And that's the new one.
That's new, that's a new board. Those are at the north side of the county, the south side of the county on 95, and then on the west side of the county coming in from Orlando on 528. So just kind of a.
So then we move into digital ads, and what you're seeing here is some new creative for Cocoa Beach. And then as you flip through Melbourne beaches, you can see a variety, and with each of these municipality campaigns, we're highlighting the unique aspects in each of those. So it gives us a chance to kind of differentiate the different areas.
Yeah, and just, I know we mentioned Cocoa Beach and Melbourne a lot, Titusville also. Last couple of years, we've really been painting them as sort of the gateway to the National Seashore, gateway, because of Merritt Island Wildlife Refuge, so to that area, and obviously to Kennedy Space Center. So that's kind of been the positioning for them as well. And then you
Yeah,
talk about
162 is some new messaging we introduced in June. Just based on what we were hearing about the economy and people's concerns about travel. We introduced this, we just got some reporting on it, and it performed really well. So we're gonna continue through August, and let that run for a while.
yeah,
I'm very pleased.
and I'd say most likely we'll keep utilizing that into next year, because I think that's gonna be a continued concern for a segment of the market, so. It performs well, so keep running it until it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then that's the new TV spot.
Yeah.
So,
And on the next page, 64, that's the storyboard for the new Fort Travel spot that's in production now. And of course, on page 65, our award-winning countdown. Seen that one several times. So moving into the visitor overview. Peterman talked about this briefly earlier, but we did see from our previous visitor study that almost slightly more than 50% of our visitors travel without children. So we've really tried to focus more on including couples and young professionals in our photography so that they feel more included. And then Peter pointed out earlier on our under target markets that we pulled back from Canada. We're just going to be watching that very closely to see if travel picks up there, and then we'll reintroduce that.
And then this is data we always get from our cellular device tracking software as to where people are coming from. So, you know, when we're talking about where do we place media, well, obviously we try to fish where the fish are and the fish are coming from. So you can see on the right side, our top 5 source markets were the 5 markets I mentioned. And then as far as out of state, you know, Atlanta, New York, DC, Charlotte, Philly, Chicago, Boston. Right now, I don't think as we go into next year, we'll have enough to kind of reach into Boston from a budgetary perspective, but we'll kind of monitor and see. And then Minneapolis, we did some co-op work with Sun Country this past year, and I think we might do something again next year. We'll see how that goes. And then, of course, you know, as far as international, you know, we've been advertising in Canada, UK, Germany, and Ireland. As I mentioned, Canada and Germany, probably not so much consumer advertising, but we'll look at the possibility of working with the travel industry, travel trade, try to, you know, do familiarization tours, try to, you know, kind of keep in the market, but not necessarily spend consumer dollars. You know, mentioned streaming. I mean, the world has just evolved in 3 years, you know, since COVID. I think it was like 10 or 15% penetration of streaming, and by the end of that year, by 21, it was almost 50-50. I think it's, you know, pretty much now everybody who would want to have access to streaming tools and different TV outlets, you know, Netflix and Amazon and all these different things. You know, I just changed at my house. We just completely changed from what we were doing and having the hard cable, and now it's just basically a smart TV with whatever we want to play at the time. And you know, sometimes we're watching shows that as they come on, and sometimes we're just, you know, going into the arsenal and just pulling out, okay, what show do you want to watch? Let's binge watch whatever. And I think that's a big change. And I think the cable companies were a little bit late to the game on it. So how we're buying media from them is we'll go to like Spectrum for Orlando and Tampa, and then maybe Comcast for Miami and Palm Beach. And then we'll say, okay, we want a mix of 60% streaming and 40% cable. So there'll be a mix of cable in there because they still have cable subscribers that are loyal and they can track it, but we're mixing in more streaming than cable. And then in markets where we're not getting cable at all, we're just going straight streaming, like a Philly or a New York, where, you know, we couldn't afford anyway to go in there and really do a heavy cable buy. We're doing that streaming buy. And the streaming buys are a lot like digital in that you're buying impressions, but you're buying targeted impressions based on your qualified audience. So you're able to really, you know, dig down and pick TV programming that really appeals to the segments that you're going after. So that's kind of the new world, if you will. And this just talks, slide 70 talks a little bit about owned and paid and earned media, you know, I always say it's just as important that we run our own platforms and we use public relations as much as we do advertising. We get tens of millions of dollars of exposure and coverage in PR. So, you know, that's money that I would have had to pay to be on those channels, but instead we're by putting out stories and taking advantage of all kinds of different things that we do, you know, whether it be turtle releases or, you know, bioluminescence. I mean, the stories that we put out often get picked up, and we're always in the top 10 or 15 or top 20 of destinations. We were recently named the top 20, I think, destination in 2025 to travel to by Condé Nast Traveler. I mean, stuff like that. We're always just trying to keep our name out there and be in these lists and try to be included in things, and that gives us huge exposure. So we're on a lot of people's bucket lists now, so that's kind of cool.
All right, so here, this is our messaging calendar, not much has changed here. Last year, we kind of switched our fall, winter, schedule a little bit, so we'll do the same again this year.
We saw a lot of pickup in January. You know, we keep saying January is one of those months that it has the real potential to grow even more. And, you know, we get just from a TDT perspective, about $3 million in TDT is collected in March, which is our biggest month. And then most of the other months are around 2, 2.5, or sorry, 2, 2.25. But, you know, January, we really felt like we could grow that. And so we extended our messaging last year and we saw a little bit of growth. So we're going to try to keep pushing that month up.
All right, and this is kind of how it all breaks down. You can see, you know, based on our messaging calendar on the previous page, the annual campaign, and then each of the seasonal campaigns and how that budget's gonna break down.
Yeah, I mean, this is where the bulk of the media gets spent as part of these, you know, either annual or seasonal campaigns. So it's a big part of the overall media plan. And then this is just for purposes of the board. When the board approves our plan, it also approves all the partners and anybody that we contract with. They automatically get approved. And that means we don't have to do RFPs for every one of these, thank goodness, because there's not enough time and we wouldn't be able to buy all the media that we buy without this. So that's why those are all in there.
And you'll see these as we go through the next few pages in the little blue boxes who we plan to work with or potentially work with. Page 75, these are KPIs. We adjust these annually each year based on how we see things performing. One thing to note is that we do expect these KPIs to shift over the next couple of years. Once we see how AI is going to impact a lot of our search. So we're just keeping a close eye on it for now. We aren't aware of any AI metrics that are kind of standard at this point. I'm sure they'll come in time because people like us are going to want to know. So.
Yeah, and some of the advertising metrics change too, because in working with the Cocoa Beach folks, they put a lot more into what I call top of funnel, some more awareness. So they put more into cable and streaming. So we bumped that number up. They put a lot more money into billboards, so we bumped that number up. And then some of the other things like Facebook and Google, we pulled back a little bit on. So we've actually, this is probably the biggest adjustment we've made to KPIs in recent years, just because we've been seeing that trend over the last few years. So we figured, well, we better adjust to that.
Okay, moving into earned and owned media, page 77. You can see there the budget we've allocated for this area. And that's just basically production, new creative, and content. For social media and the website. One of the things I wanted to point out here was that they were trying to connect our online, media. Oh, okay.
I got to try to do it.
We're connecting our offline, content with what we're doing online. So you'll see more and more QR codes, you know, they've made it come back in the last couple of years. And then trackable links, of course. And I don't know if you all saw the last TDO update, but our new B2B website is now live and available. So a lot of the resources we have on our current, leisure site are now going to live there. That would be for meeting planners, sports planners,
Travel industry,
travel,
media,
film permitting, I think any business, entity that wants to work with us. So it'll be a good resource hub, not just for them, but also for you all, because there's more information there about how to engage with them. And this is a new slide this year. This is artificial intelligence. And just like I said earlier, we're keeping a close eye on how it's going to impact what we do and how we do it. A lot of people are moving to AI to plan their travel. So we have kind of amped up our SEO efforts to make sure our website feeds the appropriate content. So that's ongoing. And then as we learn more and when we have metrics that kind of help us understand the impact that we have on those search engines, then we'll implement some other activities to try to drive that.
I mean, what Google's doing now is just incorporating AI at the top of their listing, and so, you know, you can expect website numbers to drop as they start serving up the answers right there on that homepage, if you will. So we want to make sure we're at least feeding that content and feeding that information, and we're sourced in it if we can be. But you know, we think that's going to have a big impact on a lot of people's websites.
Yeah, a lot of people are referring to it as an answer engine now instead of a search engine. You can type in your question and you don't have to go anywhere else. In addition to that, I will say a lot of our marketing stack also, our technology stack includes AI. We're seeing that introduced. Even our mail email marketing platform has an AI integration in it. So more and more are including those, taking advantage. Public relations and film, there's not a whole lot that's changed here. Obviously, it's just the name of the game is getting as much coverage as we can get, and we've had a lot of good success. And last year was really incredible. As Peter mentioned earlier, we do FAM tours on the PR side for media, so those are popular. We're already looking up October and November. I think we're at capacity for those 2 months. Oh, yes, and we are out for RFQ. Well, we will be shortly for our PR agency. Our current agency's contract is up. It's been 3 years.
5.
Has it been 5
Yeah.
years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're required to do that, and so that'll be going out shortly, and their contract starts at the end of the year, December 31st. So come January 1st, we will have either a new agency in place or we'll redo it.
On slide 82, partnerships, you know, this is just all the different things that we do with, you know, work with the port, we work with the airport, work with the chambers, the EDC. I think, you know, those of you who've been around know we help with the whole Space Coast, you know, Tomorrow Launches Here program that the EDC launched locally. one of the other opportunities that came along and, we're putting it in the budget is an opportunity to work with Moon Pie. On a promotional level. They, obviously they're all over the place, but they're heavy in the south. And we think that there's a great opportunity, to do a promotion with them where we'll be in grocery stores. And, we'll have either end caps or we'll have standalone, displays. And we'll be at the top of the display, and then they'll have, obviously, moon pies for sale. I think that's Moon Pie on the Space Coast is a nice kind of synergistic partnership. So that's one of the things we're working with. We're also working with the airport on that program I mentioned, bringing in all the airlines and trying to do a big fan with them. So that should be.
Peter, just, Moon Pie's approach, and we're talking to them also.
Oh, really?
So I don't know if there's any synergies that can come out of that, but maybe there's something we can talk about.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah. Are you talking with their agency or with them directly?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Good to know.
Does Silver North and the TDC do any sort of cross promoting where we use their content on the pages and vice versa?
We have done stuff in the past.
We have.
I think there's bigger opportunities still to do more, honestly. And that is one of our key strategies for the upcoming year, or calendar year, but is to work closely with.
Yeah,
So.
there's things that you do or that the TDC doesn't, it's great engagement.
Yeah.
No reason not to. Lose to the same market.
Great.
We're there for you. If you make it happen, we'll do it. Sports, I mentioned, we're doing more of an outreach than we ever have the last couple of years. Our sports commissioners, been going to, different shows, different, actual events. For instance, the National Fast Pitch Coaches Association, Women's Lacrosse, Intercollegiate Women's Lacrosse Association. They all have summits, they have conferences. We're trying to be there and try to build two sides of the business. One side is, having tournaments and bringing teams down to kind of compete with one another. The other is training, like spring training or, with rowing's big on using the Indian River. There's a couple of different places, Canal 54, and then there's also up in Merritt Island, there's a canal where they can race one another. And so trying to get like 4, 6, or 8 colleges to all come down at the same time and then just do practice runs, basically just do training. So we're trying to use the fields that we have, use the facilities that we have. This is all separate and above the relationship we have with USSSA. The county is, the landlord for the stadium and all the stadium facilities. USSSA is charged with bringing teams down to play tournaments and do their trainings and everything. And they're supposed to bring 100,000 room nights a year. That's it's in the contract. Last year they were at like 95,000, so they're getting pretty close to that. So we're just we support them and work with them, but all of these other things are on top of that with all of the other parks and fields that we have access to. So,
What is it? Doing these, the sports sort of liaison between groups going down.
Terry, Parks is his name. He's our sports guy now. Yeah. And then I work directly with USSSA on their stuff.
With the $60,000 budget, they're gonna.
This is like it's marketing, you could talk a little bit to it. I mean, there's direct mail, that's part of it.
We're
There's,
mostly targeting coaches, and organizations, so with very little outreach to any athlete. But it's a pretty
the coaches make all
focused,
the decisions.
yeah, very focused.
Or team manager.
Yes,
Yeah, then as I mentioned, there's another pot of money that we use to incentivize, so they can get up to $15 per room night for what they bring, but they bring a minimum of 250 rooms. So that, I think what we just, got approved by the board was gonna generate pretty close to 20,000 room nights just from that pot of money, so. There are a couple of different ways that we're going into that market. International, I talked a little bit about this, you know, we partner with TUI, you know, we'll do that again. We'll do a joint advertising program. They match dollar for dollar. So if we put in 250,000, they'll put in 250, so $500,000 that would go into the UK market, trying to drive their flights and their business. We have a partner. Huh?
You have numbers on how they did?
I do. They're actually a little down this year. I have last year they were okay, but this year they've cut a couple of routes, and so they are down a little bit this year. But we're still in the middle, you know, we're still finishing the season, but yeah, they did not have the best year of the 4 years, so a little concerned about that, but you know, our focus is trying to get more of those people to stay here, and we're trying to keep, you know, hotels giving them inventory so that they can package and have more attendees stay here, and that's kind of been our biggest focus the last couple of years. So even though they might be bringing in fewer people, we're hoping more people are actually staying on the Space Coast than transferring over to Orlando and doing the theme parks and things like that. So obviously they still want to do that, but we're just trying to get a bigger piece of that pie. We also have partners in Ireland that we work with, a tour operator that we've done some campaigns with. We want to do that again. And then we have our own, and then we have representatives that representation in the EU and the UK that do a lot of training, go to a lot of conferences and things over there and try to train their agents. So, and that's Roxana, that's her picture there. So she's doing a good job for us, trying to get the word out about us with the trade. So much is booked, most international travel is booked through the travel industry, so it's not independent travel. And then on the US side of that, domestic side, that's Tom Bartusek, that's this piece of it, and he's very focused on, you know, trying to go out and do outreach, go to conferences, but then also bring a lot of familiarization tours into the market. Next year, IPW, which is the really big international show, is actually going to be in Lauderdale. So I don't know, are you guys going to have a big presence there, you think? Yeah, we're still talking to the folks who visit Florida to see what they're going to do. So we'll probably be part of theirs. If there's anything that we can do, like trying to do a couple of post IPW fans. So maybe we could partner on that.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Sure.
And then this is kind of a newer, you know, area, even though we've always kind of had our hands in this. We've decided to step it up. We met with a group of hotels last year, and they really expressed an interest in this area and trying to grow it more. So we partner with a company called Cvent. Cvent does a lot of outreach, and when meeting planners are interested in a particular area, they'll put out an RFP and they'll do it across Cvent. We've responded now to several and won several. So we've only been in Cvent about a year, and we've already won like 2 or 3 RFPs. So we're already seeing some good ROI on that investment. It's about $10,000 to $12,000 to be part of that. And when they accept an RFP, I mean, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of visitor spending that they're generating, and room nights and everything. So Tom's also in this area too. Tom Bartusek does that. So try to keep stepping that up. Of course, we operate our visitor center, and we're seeing more and more from that. I was over there today, and it's interesting. We'll get interest both from the local market of people that want to, you know, present their brochures and put them in the facility. We have partners that every quarter will actually come in and decorate a corner of our office, like some different historic homes, museums, things like that. And then people come in and they're really super interested in it. So I'm always surprised by that. People are accessing our visitor center, so we're continuing to try to figure out how do we just around more foot traffic. We do. Is it like? It's not tens of thousands of people. But it's probably hundreds of people a month. Yeah, so on a monthly basis, several thousand.
The number one, thing that they're looking for. So like hotel deals or things to do.
They're looking for things to do. They're looking for itinerary planning. Elsie, our person who runs the office, she is just so knowledgeable about everything going on. And a lot of times people just walk in and say, help me, I don't know what to do. I'm here. Give me, we've got a couple of days, after the cruise. A lot of them, people come in after a cruise and they don't really know much about the area, and she just helps them plan an itinerary. What else? I mean, she's
pounding the pavement right now. She's meeting with groups, especially hotels, to let them know to connect with us through the Visitor Information Center, requesting brochures from the partners, collateral.
This fall, we've got a program called Fall is for Foodies, and the last couple of years it's begun to ratchet up where it's gotten more interest. I think we had about 24 restaurants participate last year, and so we changed it last year to be you have to have a prefix menu in order to be included in the program. So Elsie and some of the other marketing team people have been going out and talking to a lot of partners about that program, and we're hoping that that'll be quite successful. So we'll see. And of course, all our research that we do, we've got to fund quite a bit with our STR and key data that we get. Datafy is our cellular company. We do our primary research with Downs. They were selected a couple of years ago in an RFP. So all of that is about 200,000. And then there's some other budgeted items. So if you add each of these pages up and get to the bottom line, it adds up to the 14.12 million that I showed on that previous slide. So it did all tie together, including money, the lifeguard money, the carry forward holdback. You can see what the tax collector gets, which, by the way, the tax collector is not collecting TDT next year. It's the clerk of courts is going to be doing it. So that'll be interesting to see. That was a change this year. That just got approved by the board. So they're very gung ho. They're hoping to do a little bit more enforcement on the vacation rental side and maybe collect a little bit more money, which would be nice. So they think that there's some opportunity there. Okay. Questions? Thoughts?
Really excited that you were able to implement so beautifully the different personalities for the different centers and providers. You said you were going to do it. Looks good.
Once we get through this branding process with the south part of the county, I think, we'll be able to hone in on what resonates.
Yeah, and being a 70-mile long county, there is just so much, from one side to the other that's different, and it's, it can all fall under the same umbrella of Space Coast, but I think having that uniqueness, why that particular area, I think that's really important.
I love the idea of what Elsie's doing. Not that I know her with the itineraries. I think it would be really fun if you had itinerary roulette on your spin a dial and say, spend a day in Cocoa Village, spend a day in Melbourne Beach.
It's an interesting
And then
concept.
you have, like, the day, I don't know.
So we do on the website, we launched a new website last year, and on the website, you can actually build your own itinerary, but that's a cool idea to add to it, like a randomizer. But one of the questions I have is, do we need to build an AI component into the site that just sort of aggregates everything.
Sure. Looking at it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have the budget next year, but maybe the year after, I think we probably should put some money for it.
Just to stay ahead of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if there's nothing else, Mr. Chair, we would love for a motion and a vote.
Exhaustive or thorough, he's gonna say about thorough review.
At least he said exhaustive and not exhaustive.
Very well thought out, very well presented. Thank you. Both of you, the whole team.
It was
Um,
a team effort.
Yeah. I don't have any questions. Any other questions from the committee? Suggestions? We can cover all the bases. So the Board of County Commissioners need to vote out of the TDC, that we've reviewed and approved the marketing plan. Can I get a motion?
Make the motion.
Second.
Dominating the,
Second.
a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sure. Last on the agenda is public comment. No public comment, then we can adjourn this meeting.
Thank
We
you.
need to announce the next meeting.
The next meeting is
First one,
September 25th.
Chelsea has started including it. That's fun.
Yeah, and so by then we'll have been before the board. So hopefully we'll be able to share that result with you. If there's anything else you guys would like to hear about, maybe we'll bring where we are with the Fort TV spot and then show the Cocoa Beach spot. I'm sorry, we didn't show it today. We didn't have it loaded up. So we'll show the two new TV spots. We can give you an update on where we are with the Melbourne Palm Bay research. You know, I don't know how far along we'll be. We're trying to finish it up as soon as we can so we can get into the branding, but we can talk about that. We talk about fall, what we're gonna do for the fall. So we're starting to kind of noodle on that right now. So any other things that you would like, just send us a message and we'll add it to the agenda. So try to make a meeting enough for worthy of a meeting. So, but that'll be the last meeting of the calendar year. So.
You good?
Thank you. guys.
Thank you, thanks, everybody.
Chelsea, they're gonna change the start.